G'day folks, it's DIY Guy 123 here. Today we're taking this old steel barn that someone gave me and gonna turn it into a chicken coop. So it's I really wanted to do this project as cheap as possible. I don't even know if I like chickens. I know I like eggs, but not sure I like owning chickens and all that goes around with it. So anyway, somebody gave me this barn and they said, you know, if you can move it, you can have it. Well, I put it on my backed up with my tilt deck float and dragged it on there. And, but I know it needs some work. And for chickens around here anyway, you need to make sure that you provide a really secure place for them to be at night, because we have raccoons and skunks and I don't know, maybe even porcupines, but at least raccoons and skunks that will go in and kill them. And the odd fox too. And so certainly with the barn like it is now, and the metal is freed up like a lot around the bottom, it's just an easy pathway for some critter to get in. Get up inside, turn a little flashlight on. From the inside it all looks pretty decent. You can see a couple of inches of rust around the very bottom, at the bottom around the perimeter. But it looks not too bad. One hole back there. And anyway, so what I'm gonna do, oh, and like, you know, that metal's rusted off there. What I'm gonna do is lift the roof off it and cut the bottom 4 inches off all the way around with a plasma cutter. So it's a nice, neat cut, and then weld it all back on. And now I'll kind of reset the, you know, the thickness of the metal around the bottom so that it's full thickness again. And these panels come off as, like, each wall is a panel. So that's panel, that's panel. There are 4 panels plus the bottom. And in order to get the wall off of there, I needed to unbolt the roof. The roof just has bolts that went through from like the top header into the angle iron that's the top of this panel. So after I undid the bolts, I was, you know, I could be super strong and lift it up, or what I did here was I took a 2x10 and ran it in. That didn't have any vents. I had to cut a gable vent in for this anyway, because chickens need a lot of ventilation, much more. I'm gonna have windows and other things here too. But so I ran that board in as far as I could go on top of the, basically on top of the rafters. And then on the other side, I did the same thing. And I guess it's pretty nice to be able to use this chain falls come along business here. So I've got the roof lifted up there and over here. And I think you can probably see that the roof is lifted off of the metal structure. Now, before I undid those bolts, I actually tested it and I had the whole garage just dangling by the by those 2 chain falls. So yeah, so I'm gonna get that up, and now that it's out of the way and there's no weight on this wall, I'm gonna undo the bolts that basically there are 4 bolts on each corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, that hold this panel to this panel. Okay, so a building, oftentimes, if it's a basic building like a baby barn, is 4 walls, a floor, and a roof. And there are really those 6 different modules. And so, as you can clearly see, the roof has been lifted off. Hoist. Now, once we got the panels in place, they're kind of awkward to move on my own, but I got them up on some stands. And you can see corrosion at the bottom of the panel, along the bottom. So instead of scrapping the barn because the bottom's worn out or adding new metal, it's like a 7-foot inside, so I'm just going to cut the bottom 4.5 inches off, and that'll basically reset the metal back to, you know, from a corrosion perspective, back to when it was brand new. So as far as cutting it off, I've got a basic plasma cutter here. I've got a straight edge set up 5 inches up from the bottom. There's a 1/2 inch thickness of the torch head. So really I'm removing 4.5 inches, and the straight edge really is going to make this quick and a nice tidy job. Once I get the bottom cut off of it, I will re-weld the supports back in place on the underside. It's basic angle iron, and then tack the sheet metal covering onto that angle iron to make it robust and rigid again. But the other idea I had too was the metal at the top has really not seen any weather. It's been protected by the soffit vents And so after I repair the bottom of the panel, like I just described, I'm gonna flip them 180 degrees, because even though I'm cutting off 4 inches or 4.5 inches, that's not all of the corrosion. So all of the metal at the top is like brand new, and that's the reason why I'm gonna flip them. All right, so here we are a couple weeks later. I get distracted with some other house projects. But one of the problems with this metal building, it's great that it's metal, but it had rust holes and puncture holes in the bottom because the floor is not super thick metal, and you know, somebody dropped something sharp on it a couple times and put some holes in it. So I just had scrap metal laying around that actually I was going to take to the metal recycler and throw it out. So I was happy to repurpose it. This is a piece of an old shelf. These were the backs out of some you know, server or computer. That is the backing out of a like a big screen television, and it had a bunch of raised parts, so I used a plasma cutter to cut the raised parts out. This piece is just sitting here, but it's really only to just distribute the weight of people standing on it, which it does fine. The rest of the pieces I welded in place. It's pretty hard to weld the super thin metal like this flooring, but anyway, did it. And it's all tacked in and the holes are covered. And what it means now is any kind of rat or a mink or anything like that won't be able to enter. So in addition, the floor is galvanized metal, but it's a galvanized coating. Galvanized metal will still rust over time. And what we've done here is we've painted all the areas that were rusty, and you know, hopefully that will just prolong the life of it. Also, we painted any of the weld joints. So that's where we are with that. We're now also reassembling the building. Any astute viewers would notice that the wording is upside down, and it actually says this side up, pointing down. This was the original bottom part of the panel, and like I mentioned, I cut the bottom 4 inches off of it. Even in doing so, there are some areas that had a slight bit of corrosion, but the original top part of the panel was completely perfect, not corroded at all. So I flipped them. So that is the original top part. All the metal that now down near the ground is perfect, brand new condition. And the metal up near the top is very good, but there are some spots that, you know, even cutting the 4 inches off it didn't restore it to perfect metal. And I also want to make sure that if a raccoon should somehow get up here and rip the soffit vent off, they can't easily get into the attic of this thing. So what I've done is I bought some 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch galvanized mesh. And when this roof sits back on its walls, the walls are going to sit on this mesh. So that'll be this edge good. And then here, I'm going to actually put another board, another fascia board on here over top of this one to build it out a little bit. And so that board will hold this in place. Just temporarily, I've got it stapled. But anyway, that's the idea. I don't want a bird to be able to nest in there, or a weasel or anything to be getting in there. So I've, you know, got that meshed off and this meshed off. So, you know, lots going on here. The gable end was solid, and I cut out for a roof vent, and also how I could get my chain falls rigged up. So I'll be, when I'm all done putting the roof back on the building, take this out and then I'll put the gable vent in. But there was a real, you know, tiny piece of rake edge here. The fascia wasn't very wide. And so what I did was just kind of refaced it all. So I put another piece of fascia on here, and up and down with the gable. And then I built these little bird box. And so I'll be covering all this with aluminum fascia. Okay, so this is how the barn looks after it's been painted and the door has been installed. And here's a look at the baby barn from the other direction, and you can see that I have a man door right here, and this is a heavy-duty steel entryway door. Don't need something that robust, but it's what I got at a yard sale for like $15 or $20, never installed. Other than it's painted nicely with steel rust paint. I've got the fascia trim on, gable vents in. I actually installed a couple of windows, and I'm really overall very happy with the barn rebuild. It should give me years and years of service, and it should be pretty robust and rodent proof. So if you like my videos, please subscribe and have yourself a great day. Good luck with your do-it-yourself